Hey there YouTube, welcome to Big Mike Beard Wisdom. So today we're going to be testing out the fastest way to cool off the car, and it's more or less my opinion as well as a lot of other mechanics' opinion. In the course of work, we jump in everybody's cars, and especially on these hot summer days, they're pretty smoking hot sometimes. So what I've done is basically cooled off this little thermometer by having it in the central AC vent to about as cold as it's going to get. So it's down to about 40 degrees. It's 73 degrees outside. That's a pretty good drop at this temperature. And what we'll do is we'll pop out about lunchtime, see where it's at, and do what I would recommend to cool your car off. You should expect about a 15 to maybe 25 degree drop in temperature. So this dropping down about 33 degrees is pretty good. But also with an ambient temperature outside of 73 degrees, it's not super hot. So we'll see you guys at lunch. Alright, so here we are. It's a little bit afternoon. 82 degrees outside. So not as hot as I was thinking it was supposed to get, so maybe it's tomorrow it's supposed to get pretty hot. But you can see inside that AC vent, it's about 110, 112 degrees. Now, what I would recommend is that whenever you get in the car and it's flaming hot, go ahead and start the car and then drop the windows. So dropping the windows will help get any initial heat out as quick as possible, short of, flapping the door open. So next, whenever you turn your AC on, don't have your AC set to inside to recirculate. Have your AC set so it draws from the outside. So instead of pulling like 100 some odd degree air from inside the car, it'll pull the 82 to 85 degree air from outside the car. And then normally I just leave it on like your standard panel, the one blowing in your face and stuff, and make sure it's all the way cold and that the AC is actually on. So in this little bit, this has already started to blow cold pretty good. So you can see it's dropped it down to 80 and it's falling. Then once the initial kind of like shock of heat is kind of out of the car, go ahead and roll your windows back up. Now that the windows are up, again, leave this not on recirculate yet and let it just kind of help pull and cool down. Now, if you're going for a trip, that's awesome. If it's something where you're just going to sit in the car for a little bit, your car and your AC system isn't designed to be ran at like maximum efficiency at idle. It's more in the 2000 RPM range for most cars. Some cars have a little bit different compressor that can do a little bit different things, but initially you'll want to increase the revs a little bit. So as you can see, we're now blowing about 60 degrees. So now that's getting more comfortable. Go ahead and set it to recirculate. Setting it to recirculate helps because essentially you'll pull air in from the passenger side footwell. So you'll pull cold air in. The cold air will go through like the heat exchanger basically. So instead of pulling hot 85 degree air from outside, you're now pulling in probably between 60 and 70 degree air in the footwell to cool it, so that that air is already cooler and is able to take more of that heat exchanger cooling effect and really help to cool off the car. Also, if you ever notice that while you're running the AC, at park or something like that, it seems like your gauge is dim when you're just idling. That's because your alternator is not designed for a heavy load like an AC system at just standard idle. So if you've got daytime running lights, you've got the stereo on, you've got the AC running, all that's going to put a pretty good electrical draw. And if your car's at idle, it's barely turning the alternator, whereas just increasing the RPM just a little bit will help really get the alternator spinning and into an area that it likes to be at. 84 degrees ambient temperature outside. And we're down to almost 50 degrees on the little thermometer. Now your AC vent right here is the coldest it'll be. Some of the warmer ones will be your ends. So your ends will be a little bit warmer and won't be quite as cold. But as long as everything's functioning properly, it should still get a substantial amount cooler. So as this has been sitting here, you can see the side vent is more in the 55 to 60 range as opposed to 50. A little bit hotter at about 4:30. So 95 degrees outside, 130 degrees inside. Same thing. So go ahead and fire it up, roll your windows down. Make sure the AC isn't on Recirculate. Crank it. Give it a little rev. Get about 2,000 RPM. That way the AC compressor's got plenty of speed. You can see it's already blowing significantly lower. So almost down to 80 degrees already. Again, 95 degrees outside. Once you get the bulk of the heat out, go ahead and roll your windows back up. And then this draws air from outside the car. By drawing air from outside the car, it'll be 94, 95 degree air as opposed to the about 130 degree air. Once you're going down the road a little bit and it feels like it's starting to cool off pretty good and you want to get that last little bit of nice cool air out, go ahead, set it to Recirculate. That'll pull air from down here. So early on, that'll be really warm air until it gets cool enough in the cabin. And then it'll start recirculating the cooled air, further cooling the cool air, and allowing a quicker drop in the temperatures. And you can see it's 92 degrees outside. We got it down to almost 60 degrees, which is a pretty good drop. If you ever run into a situation where you're not getting at least 15 to 20 degrees of a drop, you may have a problem with your AC system. And should probably get it checked out. So it could be something as simple as a leak in the AC system, or it could be something like the mode door. Maybe it's not going all the way to cold and stays a little bit on warm. But definitely, if it's not cooling enough, give them this kind of description. So tell them that, hey, it was 92 degrees outside and it didn't seem like it was cooling enough. So if you get someone to check it out, normally they can try and figure out what's going on. But in general, it's never going to be super duper cold when it's really hot outside, just because there's so much work that the AC has to do. And especially if you're just idling. If you're just idling, things aren't spinning quite fast enough for it to make sense and really cool itself off. So we'll see if there's a slight increase at all. You can kind of see it slowly creeping up. So as the evaporator in your dash kind of starts to almost heat soak a little bit, you'll get less performance out of it. Some of the big things that are going to change as to how well your cabin cools down is the size of your cab. So years ago, I had a big crew cab truck, and that thing would take forever to cool off. Then when I bought the regular cab Silverado, that thing gets cooled off before you leave the parking lot. So in this little Saturn Astra, this cools off pretty quick. But if you were in something bigger, like a full-size sedan, it's going to take a little bit longer to cool off. So if you live somewhere where it gets pretty hot, and it's kind of a concern that you want AC to work really good, I'd almost recommend getting a smaller car, just so that you can benefit from having the smaller cabin. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to like and subscribe. I'll check you next time.